Hello, dear friends. Whenever James Gilliland of SETI News publishes an article, he gets straight to the point, and it is in the public domain. I can't describe everything he says for obvious reasons, but I can accept and summarize his most important paragraphs. Opinion piece. Awakening. We have never been alone. We choose to be victim or master. It is having connection with Source. We are creating heaven on earth. The awakened apply universal law. We can choose the path we take. Never forget those in need. Always reserve a little for others. Be aware of gratitude and generosity. Move out of the reactive mind to the creative mind. Increased frequency wakens the dark ones. Changes are happening right now. A victim doesn't take personal responsibility. Better to die fighting than to live as defeated. We are experiencing a rise in frequency. The downward spiral will implode and collapse. Learn to heal the unseen negative influences. The end of suffering is the glory called Nirvana. It is the conquest of the self through the will. The gain of one being cannot be the loss of another being. Attains enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. Electricity and fuels drive up inflation in Spain. The world economy is caught in a perfect storm. Big banks warn that volatility is coming soon. Let's start. The Final Battle Merging Timelines is the title of the interesting article published by James Gilliland of SETI News last Tuesday, October 12, at midnight. In his view, to be awake is to know and make your own personal connection with the Absolute, the creator of the universe, the great spirit or soul of the world, to honor the sacred cycle of life, and to discern between lesser gods and lesser agendas. To be awakened is to recognize the omnipresent creator within all creation, to understand the quantum entanglement, the connectedness of all, the sacred cycle of life, and to act accordingly. It transcends race, color, culture, and religion. Definition. The word awakening refers to the physical action of leaving asleep and passing into wakefulness. To awaken is to cut off or interrupt the sleep of one who is sleeping, to bring to memory something already forgotten, to make someone reflect or reconsider, to cause a desire or a feeling to be born or manifested, to become wiser or more knowledgeable, and to raise issues or topics so that someone is moved to do or say what he or she didn't think. The Buddhist doctrine of awakening strives to demonstrate that Buddhist asceticism is not a pusillanimous resignation in the face of life's misfortunes, but spiritual combat not less heroic than that of a knight on the battlefield. As the Buddha himself said, in quotes, better to die fighting than to live as the vanquished. Such a resolution coincides with the aim of triumphing over material resistances in order to attain awakening. However, what is at stake is in this combat is the conquest of oneself by one's own forces and without any other authority than of one's own experience. The end of suffering. Nirvana is spiritual awakening, the state of liberation from both suffering and the cycle of rebirths. Nirvana is a Sanskrit word that refers to a state that can be achieved through meditation and spiritual enlightenment, and consists of liberation from desires, suffering, individual consciousness, and the cycle of reincarnations. Siddhartha Gautama referred to Nirvana as follows, in quotes, "There is, monks, a condition where there is no earth, no water, no air, no light, no space, no boundaries, no limitless time, no being of any kind, no ideas, no lack of ideas, no this world, no that world, no sun, no moon. That, monks, I call neither coming nor going, neither a rising nor a passing away, neither death nor birth, nor effect, nor change, nor stopping. That is the end of suffering." Nirvana is a transcendent state free of suffering and individual phenomenal existence. The word comes from above, meaning to cool down or to go out, like the end of a candle. The connotation is that only in Nirvana are the flames of hatred, attachment, and ignorance extinguished. In the state of Nirvana, the otherwise eternal cycle of transmigration is broken and eternal bliss is attained. Eastern philosophy, I talked about union with the Absolute and eternal self called Brahman, which is the source of all things. Nirvana means moksha, or liberation from samsara, or the cycle of repeated births and deaths, in which the soul, or Atman, merges with the divine or the Absolute. This liberation is therefore a fusion of the soul with God, similar to the mysticism of Western religions. Gautama Buddha redefined the attainment of Nirvana through a process of meditation in which the body and mind are analyzed as devoid of intrinsic individuality. In that process, there is a void of individuality called sunyata, or of everything present in the subject's body and mind. This lack of individuality is also common to all phenomena in the universe. Universal law. Those who are awakened focus on character and applying universal law in all that they say and do. Universal peace, brotherly love, individual freedom, and prosperity for all is the foundation of the awakened. It transcends all cultural and religious boundaries. This is the upward spiral. Are we aligned with universal law or unity consciousness? Are we aligned with universal peace, brotherly love, individual freedom, and prosperity for all? Are we creating heaven on earth? Humankind is in the midst of higher and lower dimensional influences, which some refer to as densities. It is all about vibration and frequency. There are lower dimensional beings that come in all sizes, shapes, and colors, filled with lower frequency consciousness, fear, anger, hatred, jealousy, greed, pride, desire to control and dominate others, holding grudges, self-serving, and divisive thinking. All these attitudes and emotions have lower frequencies. We increase the frequencies when we address and heal wounds, traumas, and wrong conclusions from past experiences. We also increase the frequency when we help others. Love, joy, bliss, service to others, the Creator in all creation, being a blessing to life, are frequencies of the higher vibration. It is said that the closer you get to Nirvana or heaven, which is a state of consciousness, the more demons rear their ugly heads. You become a threat to the unhealed and the unconscious, both physical and non-physical. Learn to depersonalize the emotions, energies, and actions of others. Practice loving detachment. Simply thank them for establishing their ignorance and character and move on. Never forget that the only reason someone has power over you is because you want something from them. Love, acceptance, approval, security, all can be found within. The temple has always been within. The Great Spirit is within. So it is an inner journey, not an outer one. Our Father who art in heaven, my Father who art in my heart. Frequency elevation. Humankind and Earth are moving through a cycle, a highly energized place in space. The electromagnetic light spectrum is increasing within the new bands. The Sun is launching flares or coronal mass ejections. The Schumann resonance is off the scale. In other words, we are experiencing a frequency elevation and healing that some refer to as ascension. This is affecting multiple dimensions. The good news is that just as there is a lower frequency dark side, there is also a higher frequency light side. There are enlightened beings above humankind who assist in the awakening and healing of humanity and Earth. There are what we are known as angels, archangels, and ascended masters, very advanced spiritually and technologically. We are not and have never been alone. We are being pulled into both directions. There is the upward spiral that lives a loving, joyous, and abundant life in service to others, to the Creator within all creation. And there is also a downward spiral, a life of fear, anger, division, greed, self-service, etc. The upward spiral will continue, while the downward spiral will implode and collapse upon itself, for both directions expand and accelerate. Free will. We can choose the path we take. We choose to be a victim or a master. A master gains wisdom from each experience, forgives and allows wisdom to settle in the soul to continue its journey. A victim projects, blames, and uses their victimhood to gain emotional or physical support from others, but takes no personal responsibility. Become the observer of yourself. Control your emotions and thoughts. Release the past and don't worry about the future. Move out of the reactive mind into the creative mind and create your tomorrow. Make decisions and actions based on universal law with impeccable integrity. In simple terms, if it is not good for everyone, it is not good. If it is harmful to humankind and the earth, if one human being's gain is another human being's loss, cease business. It really is that simple. Solidarity. Set aside a little for others. Watch out for the needy who extend from other timelines and dimensions. Don't forget the needy in this dimension. Be aware of gratitude and generosity. Most importantly, learn that we live in a multidimensional world with different timelines. Our thoughts and actions affect others not only in this dimension and timeline. Learn to heal invisible negative influences. Maintain your own authority. Create sacred space and be of service to others. You are not just a body and a socially engineered personality. Help others without losing your energy. Just reading this article can change everything. Keep an open mind, a loving heart, and a pure intention. Choose your thoughts and actions wisely. Changes are happening. These times are expressing great change all over the planet. Many changes that seemingly are not what you want to happen, but you know that these are changes that must happen, for they cannot be stopped. All must rise as one for the light to enter this planet. Raise the frequencies, raise the consciousness of this planet, and all that is within this planet. There are many changes in process at this time. You have been told to prepare for those changes, never knowing when they will happen. But I tell you now, they are happening at this time. Many things are behind the scenes, but for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, you can find these truths. They are here, and all you need to do is what is called connecting the dots, as many are doing now, because it is about the light coming in and illuminating the darkness everywhere, and the darkness fades more and more. But before it fades away, you must first go out into the light and experience the light, experience the higher frequencies, and then have a choice to go into those higher frequencies and be within that light, or to fade from it. And yes, many have already decided to fade from the light. They don't want to be within the light. Think of many of them as the vampires within your fables. They turn away from the light. They cannot stand the light. They turn away from the higher frequencies because they cannot handle it. And as Gaia keeps increasing her frequency, she leaves less and less room for those of lower frequencies. You are destined, all of you. All of you who resonate with these words are destined to be part of this great shift that is happening. Sign it, Saint Germain, through James McConnell and Shoshana. October 3rd, 2021. Breaking news. The world economy is caught in a perfect storm. From steak bowls in Tokyo to fried chicken in London, consumers are beginning to feel the impact of the rising costs sweeping through the global economy. Investor who predicted the 2000-day mortgage crisis predicts a new crisis. Investor Michael Barry, known for predicting the 2000-day mortgage crisis, is now predicting the possibility of a new crisis. In quotes, "The bond and the stock markets depend on the Fed, devoid of any credibility," wrote the hedge fund manager in a now deleted tweet. Nevertheless, the investor is optimistic about the stock market performance of three companies: Facebook, Alphabet Inc., and Walmart. But this is his personal opinion. Banks. Big banks warned market volatility is coming soon. Market volatility has fallen since September, but the nation's top bankers want that turmoil could soon return, thanks to the Federal Reserve. Some banks shift their cash into treasuries. Some big banks are buying more government securities, and yields begin to rise, and the Fed looks set to scale back its bond buying program, a balance sheet shift that could temporarily boost bank profits by several percentage points. Banks hit big profit estimate thanks to economy rebound and deal bonanza. The four largest U.S. consumer banks posted another solid quarter this week, as the economy's temporary recovery allowed them to free up more cash they had set aside for losses from the crisis, while also boosting their bottom lines in hot deals, equity finance and trading. IMF calls on central banks to watch inflation avoided. The International Monetary Fund's Steering Committee on Thursday asked global policymakers to keep a close eye on price dynamics, but to look through inflationary pressures, which would be transitory and fade as economies normalize. Supply crisis. The challenge of fixing the supply chain. The Port of Los Angeles is beginning the hard work of convincing terminal operators, importers, warehouse owners, and trucking companies to agree to move more cargo overnight. Port of Los Angeles working against the clock. Officials at the Port of Los Angeles, the largest dock in the US, are working against the clock to comply with an order to open and operate its facilities 24 hours every day of the week. Container congestion at British ports to last 4 months. Congestion affecting ports around the world, which recently forced several container ships to divert from Britain to European ports, will last for another 6 to 9 months, the British Ports Association said Wednesday. Europe. German economy forecast downgraded. Germany cuts its growth forecast as global economic recovery is held in check by energy crisis and supply chain meltdown. With an economy based on manufacturing and exports, the German economy will not take off in the next 6 months, according to economic institutes. Vienna, capital of affordable rents. The commitment of social housing keeps Vienna as one of the European capitals with the most affordable rents, despite the fact that costs in the private real estate sector have risen by more than 50% in the last 15 years and have continued to rise during the crisis. The combined effect of rising oil prices and high taxes is pushing up fuel prices in Italy and increasing annual household expenses by almost 400 euros. This news is from Italy. This last news. Britain asks for 800 foreign butchers to avoid pig slaughter. Britain will offer 6-month emergency visas to 800 foreign butchers to avoid the mass slaughter of pigs. It said Thursday after farmers complained that an exodus of slaughterhouse at meat processing workers had left pig sector. European Union examines the ethical limits of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is part of our lives, but it poses serious ethical dilemmas. It has positive aspects. Facial recognition is being used, for example, to identify diseases such as dementia, by being able to detect signals invisible to the human eye. But there is a risk that the system developed for medical purposes could be used, for example, by law enforcement without any judicial oversight. Spain. Electricity and fuels push up inflation in Spain. The sharp rise in electricity and fuel prices pushed up inflation in September to 4%, 0.7 of the percentage point higher than in August, and the highest rate since 2008. Spanish increasingly alive in the world. There are more and more Spanish speakers. 7.5% of the world's population already speak Spanish, and the number of Spanish speakers is expected to continue to grow. In 2021, almost 493 million people will have Spanish as their mother tongue, 6.3% of the world's inhabitants, while potential users, native speakers and learners, will reach 591 million. Spanish America. Mexico wants that immigration will not slow without more investment in Central America. The US needs to invest more in Central America if it hopes to reduce record levels of northward immigration, Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard said Wednesday. Argentina places debt for $468 million. Argentina placed this Thursday in the domestic market treasury bills and bonds in local currency for a total effective value of some $468 million. The Catholic Church lashes out against the musical play in Argentina. The leadership of the Catholic Church in Argentina called for censorship and the resignation of officials in reaction to the presentation at the Colón Theater in Buenos Aires of an adaptation of Theodora, an oratorio by German composer Georg Handel, which includes text by Argentine dissident theologian Marcela Althaus-Reid. Taiwan will not start a war with China. Taiwan will not start a war with China, but will defend itself fully, Defense Minister Chiu Kuo-cheng said Thursday, amid rising tensions in the Taiwan Strait that have raised global concern. Middle East. The Middle East is running out of water. North Africa and the Middle East are the driest region of the planet. They are currently 5% of the world's population, some 284 million inhabitants, has access to only 1% of the world's drinking water, according to the IMF. Chaos in Beirut. Armored vehicles arrived in Beirut as the Lebanese capital descended into chaos, with crowds led by Hezbollah and Amal groups demonstrating against Tarek Bitar, the chief judge in the investigation of the port explosion. Lebanese army opens fire on armed fighters in central Beirut. Gunfire and explosions rock central Beirut. The Lebanese army warns it will open fire on any armed people it sees in the country's capital and calls on civilians to stay indoors. Worst riots in years leave 6 dead and fear of sectarianism in Beirut. A protest called by Shiite groups to demand the dismissal of the judge in charge of investigating the Beirut port explosion in 2020 led Thursday to heavy riots in the Lebanese capital, which resulted in at least 6 dead and 16 wounded, and sparked fears of a new wave of sectarian violence in this country that was the scene of a civil war between 1975 and 1990. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends, for your attention.